I'm Alix and this is Sarah, and today we will summarise and discuss Chapter 1, Introduction to Feminist Research, from our key textbook, Doing Feminist Research in Political and Social Science by Brooke Ackley and Jackie True. We will outline the two main functions of the chapter. So Sarah is going to focus on what feminist research is and why we should think about it, and I'm going to focus on the chapter's introduction to how we do feminist research. Then Sarah will discuss the structure of the chapter, and I'll have a look at the content as a sort of introductory content segment.
Alright, so first of all, what is feminist research and why is it important? Now, to understand this, we first need a brief definition of feminism. Now, the authors take feminism as a critical perspective that draws attention to the way that injustices are experienced differently and uniquely by women. This perspective can help to reflect on and attend to dynamics of power, knowledge, relationships and context throughout the research process. So essentially, a feminist perspective helps us to understand why and how women as a group have a different experience of political and social life from men. A critical feminist perspective aims to understand and transform, rather than simply describing, inequalities caused by gender. So what does this do for a concept of feminist research? Feminism drives a certain research ethic. Because of the reflective and transformative ideals of feminism, a feminist research ethic is a methodological commitment to researching in such a way as to reflect on the power of epistemology, boundaries, relationships and context, with a normative commitment to transforming unjust social situations. So why should we research using such an ethic? This book focuses on the methodological contribution that feminists can have and make to social science research. This contribution is not necessarily the same as a critical research methodology because of the specific scope of feminism. Feminist research provides valuable contributions to previously gender-blind fields of study. Feminist research can, for example, provide different conceptions of security to include things like domestic or environmental security. A feminist research ethic is important because without acknowledgement of possible discrimination and obstacles uniquely facing women, there is the potential that policies and programs produce distorted effects. Feminist research, guided by the ethic I have described, reveals and reflects upon how power and epistemology need to be taken into account as possibly providing bias while doing research, both in the subject and the content of the research and the methodology of the research.
How one undertakes feminist research is informed by the reasoning behind using such a methodology. Using critical feminist perspectives when undertaking research involves being critical and reflective while researching. This involves recognising the dynamic, non-linear nature of research and challenging the assumptions and ways of constructing knowledge that occur within research. A feminist research ethic mainly informs the methodology that guides research. This book aims to outline and discuss such a methodology. A methodology is a theory and analysis of how research does and should proceed, as opposed to a method which outlines research techniques. A methodology is a normative approach to research. Undertaking research with a feminist research methodology involves careful consideration of the assumptions that occur within research and how power affects these assumptions in particular. This involves a critical analysis of who is included and excluded and why. Often categorizations are broken down through this process of reconsideration. Feminist methodology involves constant reflection upon how one is undertaking their research. How we research affects the findings of our research as well. Transformative gender mainstreaming is a key aim of feminist research. Feminist research considers how the consequences of different policies, movements and situations affect men and women and can differ in terms of a gendered experience. This can transform our understanding of certain concepts and situations. For example, breaking down the idea of a household as a single economically unitary actor through gender analysis has led to new research concerning the economic role of household work, which is often undertaken by a woman. How feminist research is undertaken reflects this goal. Constant consideration of power, categories, and forms of exclusion mean looking at who has been missed or forgotten, and involves bringing considerations of gender into fields that haven't considered it before. One of the book's main aims is to provide a guide as to how to undertake research with a feminist methodology. It does this in a linear fashion while stressing that research itself is non-linear. The non-linear nature of research is encouraged by constant reflection upon the research itself. which is key to researching with a feminist research ethic. While trying to pin down ways of undertaking research with a feminist ethic, the book aims to avoid essentialising the research process. This is a common criticism of many scientific methodologies that have been applied to the social sciences. However, trying to provide concrete advice involves the risk of essentialising the research process. To overcome this, we can just be aware of this risk and continue to think about it and remain critical and reflective while we research.
So hopefully our brief summary of the content in the chapter has been helpful. Now we'll move on to a bit of a critical engagement with the chapter, and I'll just make some comments on the structure and organisation as part of the chapter's success as a whole. So the introduction to a critical feminist perspective and the outlining of a feminist research ethic are logical first steps in this chapter, but these themes are constantly reiterated throughout the chapter. Therefore, structure-wise, the introduction does not have definite different sections. This seems to be a reflection of the book's project, a discussion of methodology, not a prescription for method, rather than a failure in clarity. The narrative style of the introduction is very successful because of the fact that social and political research is inherently dynamic, and a dynamic discussion of methodology is most appropriate for this. The outline of future chapter content and the relevance these chapters could have for different researchers is a very successful inclusion in the chapter. That particular chapters might appeal to researchers new to feminist research or feminists new to research, and the recommendation to select chapters relevant to individual projects, questions and prior knowledge is helpfully described. However, this information might have been a bit more accessible in different format. It was quite a dense looking paragraph. However, it was certainly very helpful to have the non-linearity of the research process reinforced by the author's hints that those with different expertise and focus would be best to focus on certain chapters, rather than simply reading the book cover to cover. Another feature structure-wise are the text boxes that are introduced in the introduction as key tools in the book that are used throughout the work. These information and definition boxes are interspersed throughout the chapter and following chapters in the book, and they provide tidbits of extra definitional content, as well as suggestions and information on additional resources. Drawing our attention to such tools early on raises awareness and highlights relevant things to look out for later in the book. However, I found these boxes a little bit distracting. When reading the chapter the whole way through, I wasn't always sure where they fit in, and a few of the suggested reading and website boxes might have been more helpful at the end of the chapter. However, the extra definitional information was really helpful and would certainly be useful for reflection upon throughout the research process.
In terms of content, the chapter did a really great job of introducing the key themes and ideas within the text. In particular, beginning with clear definitions of feminism, a feminist research ethic, and a feminist research methodology helped set the main ideas in the text at work. They also frame the agenda of the work immediately. Being clear about the agenda of a text is particularly important, as this prevents the reader from being misled or not understanding the assumptions and ideas that work behind a text. This is a reaction to the privileging of scientific, supposedly objective and definitive research methods. It reveals feminist research as openly subjective and self-aware. Perhaps situating the text within the history and evolution of the practice of research methodology would have helped cement this idea further. This would help to explain the approach as a move away from these kind of rationalist, objective scientific methods to a recognition of the subjective nature of research, although this point particularly is hammered home. It would also help explain the need to be reflective and self-aware of oneself within the research process, and how one's background, assumptions, judgments and ideas and concerns affect the research process and the conclusions that come from it itself. The introduction outlines the key aims of the book in a non-linear fashion and shows how the different goals and ideas within the book are interwoven. The book aims to be an argument in favour of a critical feminist research methodology through channeling a research ethic. At the same time, it explains how the contributions made to the research through the use of such a methodology are important. The importance of being critical and reflective is explained in tandem with explanations of how this can be done. It works at developing a practical guide to undertaking such research while arguing for its legitimacy and importance simultaneously.